Hey everybody, I'm Connie Buna.
I'm Roland Kim.
This is the Launch, Grow, Harvest podcast.
Welcome, everyone.
Friends, thanks so much for chiming in. Today, Roland and I are going to talk about side hustles. What is a side hustle? It's all the rage.
To me, a side hustle is a small business that is not your job and it's not your primary source of income. Once it grows to that point, I will call it your job or your business. And I'm a big proponent of side hustles. I believe that everyone should have one. It makes you a better employee, first and foremost, because I think what a lot of people discover by having a side hustle and actively pouring their heart and soul into it on off time and their energy is they might realize that it's not as easy as they thought it would be, and that the opportunity might not be there as large as they were hoping. And then they're possibly a lot more grateful for the job they have, and they're not constantly thinking about what I might have been great at and if I only had done that instead of staying on the stable course. And equally, when the side hustle is successful and is working, it really offers you everything from great tax efficiency to help write off some of your car, your home office, your cell phone, meals, client events. I think a lot of people who have not had a small business or side hustle don't understand the efficiencies that it can offer in your annual taxes that you're paying on your salary. And so it's a great way of minimizing your taxes. And over the last 2 decades of actively watching people, it's amazing how many huge opportunities have come from a hobby, from a passion play that was a side hustle. That everything from, I can think of someone who has a pastry shop now that used to make muffins out of their home for birthdays.
Yes.
Myself, I have a bullion business that came from a side hustle during COVID. And so the cool part is it's a very safe way of not quitting your day job and risking it all.
Yes.
And testing the water, getting experience, and it's very popular these days. There's so many different ways of doing it.
Totally. I've heard some argument and I've heard some statements that the rise of the side hustle culture may be perceived as a not so healthy change in society where people actually need to be working multiple jobs in order to make ends meet. What are your thoughts on that critique?
Yeah, so if it is where you're stagnant and you're stuck and you need the 2 jobs, then I can see that being a real challenge. But I would say that's a challenge where it's a conversation of the core job is not paying you what it needs to.
Yes.
And the numbers don't add up for what you need in life, where you're living and what you're taking in. I would say that's similar to someone that's struggling on one job.
Yes.
So I don't, and to a little bit of a degree, there's people that have moved forward in life through a side hustle that wasn't their passion play,
Yes.
but it was a job available, driving or delivering.
Yes.
And I guess many things it can be problematic if you can't get beyond it.
Yes.
And otherwise, we've heard multiple stories where people were in different sales jobs during COVID and things, and it helped navigate them through it.
Yes.
The topic you bring up is an interesting one. I don't know what the answer is with folks who are working in jobs that are where they're stuck and they feel that their education perhaps can't get them other opportunities. And that's, I'd love to get your feedback on that. For me, it's just naturally hard to go there in my brain because I'm always the problem solver.
Yes.
But I know that's a privilege that I've gotten and I've built. And so for me, I just don't often come to a problem that I can't see my way through. But that is definitely one of the challenges of side hustles. If you look at companies that utilize people to work in their big business that's really crafted to appear like a side hustle. So to me, it's
is
not
like
a
the
Uber
Ubers
driver,
and the
right?
deliveries
That's not a self-created side hustle. You're essentially a part-time employee for someone else's big business that's
Okay.
creating a.
So you see a distinction
I see
there.
a distinction there because you're not in control. You're choosing.
Right.
It's like you're choosing, hopefully, for a period of time to help you tide through that stage. But it's not like you're going to work at Uber and then somehow have a portion of the business, right? A side hustle to me would be that you're in charge of it.
You're
more
so
a
you're
part-time
building
employee.
something.
You're building something. That is an interesting point that I didn't really think of, where there's quite a few large companies now that in many ways skirt their obligation to regular employees through doing the part-time employment. For me, from the purpose of this conversation, a side hustle would be that you're in charge and you're choosing to do it.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so it's more either you see an opportunity or you've always thought about branching off and trying something. And we do live in a world where you can very creatively and cost effectively trial things and see if that opportunity exists.
And see if you enjoy what you're doing.
Yes.
I like the idea of taking something that is potentially a passion and giving yourself permission actually to pour into it.
Yes.
And I think that sometimes that's also an interesting way to frame the idea of a side hustle. Not that anyone would say that music or artistic pursuits are massive revenue generating activities, but for myself personally, my commitment to my music practice and being an active working musician and performing musician has been such an immensely joyful part of my life.
Yes.
And I do believe that it has added dimensions to my core businesses.
Definitely.
Because it also gives me, because it's coming from a place of joy and passion, it actually gives me a little bit of a release from other stresses.
Yes.
And there is something quite delightful about being able to completely shift your mind into a full different area of focus. What are some other places, or when we're thinking about our core business is real estate, that's one of the primary ways in which we see ourselves in the world. And so if other people are in a similar industry to our sales reps, mortgage brokers, realtors, what are some other side hustles that you would think might be a natural dovetail?
I think a natural dovetail is if you can think of an auxiliary business to what your core job or profession is. If you sometimes look at your expense sheet and see what you're spending a lot of money on, and if there's a passion about that, for example, if you're passionate about photography or installing signposts or decorating or building gifts, you could quickly come up with a dozen different side hustles. And the same thing that you mentioned with your music is your degree of investment and sales coming from your music. If it was your only job, could be negative because you're struggling to survive off that.
Yes.
Or in your case, it's uplifting and really rewarding. So it's interesting that the same level of success, depending how someone approaches it and what their expectations are, is a win or is a negative.
Yes.
And so the reason I brought up side hustles today is because certainly in real estate, and it hasn't changed over the last decade, I have the fortune to talk to a lot of new agents, and when I asked them, where did you come from and what made you come here, it was still a lot of people that believe the industry is different than it is, that it's somehow perhaps an underserviced industry that's in huge need of realtors just coming and plucking transactions, so to speak. And sometimes people have left some really established businesses or roles, or sometimes they retire and they've talked about being a realtor or a business person for such a long time. And then they go and do it, and it doesn't reward them the way they thought it would, and it doesn't fill their bucket.
Yes.
And so we live in a world right now that you can very comfortably trial almost anything without making a dramatic change in your business or in your job.
And I would say there are plenty of people that regard real estate as a side hustle.
Yes.
Right? So let's take a few moments and talk about that. And I want to say it out loud just to be mindful for my own self. That there's nothing wrong with that fundamentally. But it is interesting to me. And I think about how does that land for the consumer? And how is that something that is beneficial to them? Are they otherwise unaware?
I think previous to us getting to the business, there was a rule you had to do it full time. You couldn't have another job. So that's certainly the entire time that we've been realtors. I don't think that has been the case. And yet it's not a direct line. We see lots of realtors that are full time that are struggling.
Yes.
And that you could perhaps say that still have a lot of area to learn.
Yes.
And we've seen part time or realtors that use quasi it's their side hustle that do great work. And so I don't think there's a straight line that one is right or one is wrong. I do think there's just some truths of the industry and that continue to grow, which is it's very difficult to know everything and stay abreast of all the changes.
Yes.
And I think that used to be easier before the flow of information We used to be gatekeepers of information, and so a lot of the realtor role was having the listings and bringing that forward to the consumer, where we help the consumer navigate the process of buying or selling and more effectively help them get what they want. But most of the time, the consumer often sees a listing themselves online. And so that's a positive, and it's also, I think, a challenge for part-time realtors, be it that they are part-time because that's the energy level that they put in or that they have another job. That can be a challenge in what is becoming more and more a profession where more time is spent off the court, so to speak, where
Yes.
you're learning
Yes.
your profession, or you're doing licensing, or you're trying to upgrade certain skills.
For sure. I think that there's a place for everyone. I'm thinking about some of the agents that we've had the pleasure of knowing over the years, and a couple of them that have incredibly successful core businesses. Having a real estate practice is for their side business.
Yes.
And in some cases, I'm just thinking about, they've structured it in such a clever way,
Yeah.
where in some scenarios, they've structured it that they're working with a business partner or in a very small team environment, and their function within that team is really to be like the lead generator. And that's happening as a result of their other core business. They have great relationships, they network, they're marketing, they know people.
Yes.
And so they're bringing the transactions into the team. And I think if that's a smooth operation,
Yes.
that could be a very valuable resource to a team, actually, to have that individual be able to say, I can't be out every weekend with these active buyers, but they're looking to buy a $500,000 property, and here's their core criteria, and here's how I know them, and yes, loop me in on all the communications, but would you be interested in being a core person to provide them with service? I think there is some magic that could happen in that regard, for sure.
Definitely the cross-pollination, we see that. Also interesting, as you're talking, I'm visualizing people that you don't know they have multiple businesses. So I would say a lot of people can migrate beyond a primary job and quote unquote a side hustle, and they just truthfully have multiple jobs.
Yes.
And they can handle it. And
Yes.
they're good at it,
And
right? They enjoy it. And they move past, I think in that position, if you're doing it solely for the money, it's not gonna win.
Yes.
But I can think of realtors that have completely opposite businesses that don't connect at all. Own a car rental company, and they're a successful
Yes.
realtor.
Yes.
And from the outside looking in, everyone thinks that their real estate business is their prime business.
Yes.
When in reality, it's quote unquote a side hustle.
Yes.
And so it's not automatic that you can't build several successful business and wealth generators. I think, again, that so many other things, as long as your purpose for doing it and your enjoyment of doing it is in the right spot.
Yes.
So
Amazing.
it always comes back to the same things, right? Are you doing it for the right reasons, and are you good at it? Do you enjoy it?
Side hustle. Friends, if you're interested in chatting more about having a side hustle in real estate, reach out to us. We would always be interested in a conversation. Connie, Buna, and Roland, Kim with the Kim Buna Real Estate Group, and Launch, Grow, Harvest.